Hello and welcome. This is episode number 43 of the vCD Roundtable. As we can see, it's Christmas edition, so we are running our Ho 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 edition, but also at the same point in time. No, but yes, you can actually speak up.
You should not say that because if Americans are watching, it might be a bit weird. Let's say Christmas edition.
I'm politically completely incorrect on that one. So I'm sticking with the Ho 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 holiday edition. So that's working. At least for this year, that is still allowed and not on the bad words list. So, welcome. Let me hand over to Toby to start with because Matthias is going to make the intro for the topic.
Yeah, hello and welcome to episode for this week. Toby here as well. And next one is Sasha.
Yeah, welcome also from my side, and directly handing over to Matthias.
Yeah, hi guys, this is Matthias. So Sasha should have made the introduction because he has the proper Christmas tree in the back. But nevertheless, today's topic is it's called Network Insight and Christmas Holiday Special. So today we're more into the topic like again networking, but not from a feature or building perspective. It's more from an operations perspective. And with networking and operations visibility, we still have the two main topics. Like we have operations manager, which has the NSX management pack to visualize certain flows. But on the other hand, and that is the main topic for today is operations manager for, no, it's not operations. It's operations for networks. I think that's the area operations for networks. That's the correct term. So former vRealize Network Insight. So that's the topic for, or the main topic for today. Why Network Insight? Maybe a brief talk about Operations Manager and the NSX management pack. So Ops Manager is more like a basic visualization and show back certain metrics, and mainly for customers. So you could create dashboards which are enabled for customers or tenants to view certain metrics and get a basic insight in the tenant networking. But if we talk about operations for networks, at least from my point of view, we're more into the service provider space. I think with virtual networks, service providers face the challenge with support calls from their tenants in terms of like, why is my networking not working? Why am I not able to reach an address? Or why is a service I built and enabled in the firewall not reachable from the outside world? Why is certain network traffic not reaching a destination? Or even worse, why am I seeing certain network traffic which should not be in my infrastructure? On the other hand, and that's maybe the second talk, is the challenge for service providers having an end-to-end view in their physical infrastructure. Because with NSX and the whole virtualization stack, it's very difficult to validate which device is maybe misbehaving or misconfigured, or why is a certain network flow not happening or happening as expected. Because I think we're all aware of the fact, like, you're sitting in front of a computer, at least you made a nice drawing up front and you checked and ticked every single piece you configured, and you are at least 100% sure that you configured everything correctly, and then you're starting the first test and it's like, that's not working. And then you're just like, oh yeah, I'm sure I did everything correctly. So which tool is supporting a network admin and the virtualization admin together as a team to troubleshoot the networking configuration? from both the physical standpoint of view and the virtual standpoint of view. And that's why we came up with the topic operations for networks. So again, with many other tools, operations for networks is not multi-tenancy. But in the end, it's, I think, a first very interesting question. Do we have the need to expose operations for networks to the tenants? Yes or no? So my opinion is it's more a service provider centric tool. It's for the SP. And why is it pretty cool with the new VCF stack? Because there is no licensing caveat around physical devices anymore. So in the past, if you bought vRealize Network Insight or whatever the name back then was, you had to license the physical devices on top. So you had certain licenses for the virtual infrastructure, but physical devices had a different license. With VCF, at least as far as I understand the licensing, you can connect the physical devices via NetFlow to network operations for networks to enable an end-to-end flow visualization and troubleshooting mechanism for operations. I think that's one of the biggest advantages in VCF regarding operations for networks. And honestly speaking, exposing a visualization of the physical network infrastructure to the tenants might not be the best idea from a security standpoint of view, just saying, right? So that's one of the reasons that I came up with, like, should be a service provider focused tooling anyway. So that's a flow-based troubleshooting and operations improvement. Another improvement is the performance monitoring of flows to identify a maybe bottleneck in the infrastructure. I know nowadays, a few infrastructures people in the past, they all have at least a few times 25 gig to the ESXi host and maybe a couple of 100 gigabits in the back end. So from that perspective, we should be we have so much bandwidth available. We're not experiencing any bottlenecks or anything else. That's one thinking. But with vSAN in the VCF stack, vSAN consumes a lot of bandwidth. If you have a lot of IOPS, that could be the top talker in the infrastructure, and others might have some bandwidth consuming applications running, like Sasha. Sasha is the king of bandwidth consuming applications. Oh yes, you are, my friend. Eve mentioned something with 8K, blah blah blah. So yeah, so bandwidth. So you could figure out which applications are consuming a ton of bandwidth. Even though maybe finding out, and we had that in the troubleshooting scenario this year, why is some traffic highly limited in throughput until we find out, oh, there is one gigabit link somewhere for whatever reason, right? Instead of like 10, 25, whatever G, it's just 1 gigabit. And then it's like, oh, shit, misconfiguration, or just a very old device not being capable of providing more bandwidth. So that's the basic service provider view. And that's why you should consider using operations for networks to start profiling your base networking infrastructure.
Which I would like to mention here, because you mentioned already the whole vSphere world, or the whole networking inside vSphere, but also what is one of the biggest advantage regarding troubleshooting compared to what we have now in NSX with the embedded troubleshooting. In Network Insight, we can also monitor our Arista Fabric, our Cisco ACI, so we can really include also external systems and not only the vSphere world. So we can also bring in our physical data center firewalls like checkpoints, Palo Altos, FortiGates. As mentioned before, on the networking side, we have the possibility to bring in the whole Cisco world, Brocades, and so on. So we can really do an end-to-end troubleshooting, not only the virtual layer, also down to the physical layer. Which is the biggest advantage.
True. So that's the infrastructure layer. If we think about other features in network and area operations for networks, because I'm a big fan of managed services and products service providers could offer their tenants. area operations for networks offer the ability to group virtual machines into what we call an application that could be kind of misused, and group virtual machines to an application which is the tenant. And that application uses the flows between the virtual machines to provide an idea of a distributed firewall rule set. So it's kind of a suggestion or a recommendation. So distributed firewall rule set building as a managed service to support or provide guidance to the tenants how to build microsegmentation if they are asking for. Because as we are all aware, not that many people or application owners have a complete communication metrics for their applications with ports and communication neighbors and peers. So it's pretty difficult to figure out which virtual machine is who is talking to whom, which port, and more important, is this expected traffic or unexpected traffic? These are.
But real quick here, Matthias, is Network Insight finally able to really use the virtual machine? Because in the past, that was just a link from the virtual machine to the IP address. And so if you had multiple virtual machines with the same IP address, it could not differentiate the traffic anymore.
Multiple
that would be
with the same IP address. That's interesting.
With the same IP address on different networks, yeah, that's perfectly fine. Because it only does the net flow analysis, and the net flow just gives it the traffic, but it doesn't actually, the IPFix protocol doesn't know the concept of the virtual machine and everything. And so far in the past, trying to build distributed firewall rules was only possible if you were to dramatically limit down the IPFix to a specific tenant by only giving it the ports of that tenant. But that in the end result had then the consequence that you needed to have one Network Insight instance per tenant, which then limits that per distributed, which you can only have.
Understand right now, you can use tags, so you can misuse tags to group virtual machines.
Yeah, but the question is, how does you could actually list virtual machines in the past, but it basically what Network Insight did was actually pull the IP addresses it got from the vCenter and actually use that to identify the virtual machines. And so it's very important to understand what it currently does there. If it can finally do that, that would be great. But in the past, at least when I looked at that in the service provider space, that was why we most of the time had to drop it out again.
Yeah, I need to give you here now the consulting answer because it is a yes/no answer. It is working when we utilize VMs which are already connected to NSX, because since we don't have the vCenter inventory anymore, we have the vCenter inventory, to be honest, in Network Insight, but the whole learning from the information is now happening from the NSX manager. So when you instantiate Network Insight with NSX already, you get the IPFix and the net flow information. This time not from your vCenter. Still, you get it for the vCenter, but also from your NSX manager. There is the differentiation already done because NSX is aware of, hey, this is a different machine like that VM. So there it is working. On a vCenter, on a single vCenter side, still we would have the same problem with the same IPs.
Yeah, that's correct. So the thing is, and maybe let's be a bit clearer, because me saying VCF, so I imply that we use NSX. Maybe that was the the misunderstanding in the talk. So I don't talk about infrastructure without NSX anymore. All right, so where we? Oh yeah, supporting customers. Supporting customers with building distributed firewall rule sets. So the only caveat we should mention, if we talk, and maybe if you want to share some thoughts around that as well, if we talk about service providers supporting their customers with building firewall rule sets, it's challenging because you need to be very clear in terms to your customer whose fault is it and who to blame if something happens because of a misconfigured firewall rule. For example, you have a data breach or a foreign person sneaking into your infrastructure because of a firewall rule, which might not be correct, but you recommended it to a customer. Yeah, that's a difficult topic, Eve, right? How to deal with it? Any ideas? That's very challenging.
The point is if you are providing these types of services and you suggest that you suggest firewall rules to your tenant, in the end, you take on some level of liability, no matter what you put in any kind of paperwork, because in the end, it clearly depends on the legislation you are in. I think in the US, we would get away with our terms and conditions in saying is like, because the customer needs to validate it themselves. In Europe, I would see this different because typically in Europe, judging is more as like you as the IT professional have more knowledge about it than your customers. So no matter what you write in the contracts, if you give them something and that actually leads to problems, then you are liable for that. At least when I look at many, many decisions, not in the security space, but in other spaces in the last couple of months, where we had cases where resellers were actually clearly telling customers that the storage system would potentially not provide the performance. And there was one legal case in southern Germany where, in the end, the judge decided that the integrator has to pay for the high performance storage because it was not clearly enough documented that the performance impact would actually harm their SAP or anything else. And so based on that, the judge decided that it's the responsibility of the reseller. We see more and more of these decisions, which in the end means you need to be very, very careful as a reseller if you want to sell a customer what they ask for, if you are not really believing the solution you're selling. And so when it comes down to security, it's an even more drastic scenario, because then the argument of the customer not having enough knowledge or anything else about it is even higher. So I would always be very, very careful. The least I would always do is I only provide the firewall rules and have the customer actually implement them, because then my legal argument would be that at least they should have had enough time to think about it when they are doing it. I would typically, it's the same like backup, I would not typically do the setup for them. That would be my legal approach. It's like, I'm not making firewall rules for customers because I cannot actually take the legal responsibility for it. Once you do that, even if the customer has signed them off, you are automatically included in the liability.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Because I think even though we are more in the IT industry, those thoughts should always be kept, or those ideas always need to be kept in mind, because it's not just open port 80 for HTTP and then you're good to go. Always have the implications in mind what you are currently recommending to a customer, especially in the security space. It's even worse. All right. So what else? Operations for networks. We have the idea to support customers, and we are able to monitor our own infrastructure. I think these are some main topics you should consider. within the service provider space, and having the whole VCF stack, because operations for networks is part of the VCF stack, and just deploy it and use it. I think that's what we said for most of the tools in the past. But at least from my understanding, I would not expose it to the tenants. Sasha, any thoughts from your side into that topic?
No, though it was only that topic that Eve mentioned with the IP addresses, and so not 100% clear how to sort it. But without that, I think it's a good product. It becomes more and more interesting also on the dedicated workload domains for customers or service provider running dedicated environments for customers. So that is a product I would absolutely use for every customer with a dedicated environment.
Oh, with a dedicated environment. See, I didn't think that one through, because if it's a dedicated environment, and you're not connecting the physical gears to the infrastructure, there is the chance to expose it to the customer, of course, because it's his own infrastructure. Yes,
Absolutely. And
good one,
what we also see on service providers more and more is that they have physical firewalls running in the data centers only for that customer. So dedicated physical firewalls, dedicated other equipment. So you can also integrate it.
Yeah, everything what is dedicated, yeah. But if it's dedicated, or if you have multiple physical devices dedicated for a customer, it gets challenging, because it needs to be dedicated end to end. Otherwise, there is one missing part in the picture if it's somewhere in the middle. So that should be considered. So where is the boundary? What am I exposing? Is it dedicated? Yes, no. Or is it something like, or it's just a switch in the middle, which is shared, but the customer sees right there, there's a port which runs the traffic. So if there is no security implication on that one, could be also added to the infrastructure for monitoring. Last but not least, you can also use alerting in operations for networks, like if a tenant crosses a bandwidth threshold, for example. So you can keep consumption under control in a better way. So we could use Operations Manager as well, but only with NSX and the virtual infrastructure. So with operations for networks, we could think about monitoring consumed bandwidth on some physical devices, maybe even if possible on the internet connection. All right.
Good. I think that's a good overview of what's possible with Network Insights and how this is going to work in the service provider world, and how to use that in the service provider world. I think moving forward, again, we can only encourage our listeners and viewers to actually drop in any messages, or even if you are not attending live, use the recordings to put in any kind of comments or questions on either YouTube or LinkedIn if you have any questions around this, and then we are more than happy to cover them in one of the next episodes, or come back with answers on that as well. We might record another live session during the time before Christmas, but it will not be released before. We will need to figure out how that is going to work out. But that being said, we would normally say happy holidays and a happy new year. But before we do that, there is one more thing at least you should be aware of. Broadcom, and we still try to figure out what exactly this means. Broadcom in the latest newsletter clearly said that new contracts will have to be yearly, so there is no monthly payments for service providers anymore. Currently, from what we understand, this understanding is even affecting you as soon as you make the slightest core change on your contracts. And I'm not even sure if this means that the existing contracts, let's say you currently have 300 cores and you want to add 30 or whatsoever, is actually taking the 300 cores from monthly payment into yearly payment as well. We are in Palo Alto, so we are going to try to figure that out and actually provide that as one of the most updated topics in one of our webinars with our service providers clearly first, and try to update the audience on that as well. That being said, it sounds like Broadcom had another surprise like last year's email with this email now for service providers, but at least it was not on the 22nd of December, just before everybody heads into the holidays. So that being said, I wish everybody...
But if
yes.
there is one thing, because this year, and it's even better because this year, the 24th of December is a Tuesday. So the 23rd is a Monday. So there is still the option to send an email like, oh, there is a nice Christmas surprise on the 23rd. Just saying.
I think then I'm going to publish a webpage with a bunch of mobile phone numbers if they do that again. And those are not our mobile phone numbers.
Oh, thank you.
So that being said, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and handing over to Toby.
Yeah, also from my side, Happy Christmas, Happy New Year. See you in one of the next episodes. Yeah, Sasha.
Yeah, Happy Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. So enjoy the time, relax a bit, and yeah, stay tuned because of many changes. I think also, yeah, looking forward for one of the next episodes. I think we can talk more about vCDA because it is also, there come also a change with vCDA. So it's available again for everyone in the service provider environment. So stay tuned.
Okay, guys, before I say Merry Christmas, we now showed the topic for episode 44, and Sasha volunteered for it. It's that easy, that simple. So is episode 44 this year or next year? I forgot. Doesn't matter. Soon. All right,
I heard Eve saying before, not this year anymore.
So next year.
The recording is most likely going to happen this year, publishing on, so live recording this year, publishing on podcasts, etc. next year.
See, that's my problem. So first episode next year, 44, will be vCDA. Thanks for watching. We'll continue vCD Roundtable next year as we did this year. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for next year. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, guys. Bye.